considered to be one of the busiest travel weekends of the year. And with many of us set to get on a plane this weekend, we're going to need all the tips that we can get to make it through the airport. So Brandon Blewett is the author of How to Avoid Strangers on Airplanes, a survival guide for the frequent business traveler, and he's also a frequent flyer with million miler status. I mean, you flew in today. Thank you for being here.
Of course.
What do you think of our airport?
I like Charlotte's airport.
Really, you do?
Well, it's also great. So I live in Dallas, and it's also an American hub, so there's plenty of direct flights between the two.
Always flying here. So give us some tips, because you are all over. You said this is what, your fourth flight of the week?
It is.
That is incredible. So what are the things that we need to know so that we can stay calm and be productive while we're flying this weekend?
I think that if you're flying this weekend, you have to take into consideration that there's going to be a lot of passengers in a confined space. Yeah. So give yourself time. Mm-hmm. And if you're not a frequent flyer and you booked your ticket through Travelocity or a third party, find a way to get the airline's app and get your confirmation codes into the app, because if there's any changes in your flight time, your gate, it's going to be in your hand as soon as that change is made.
It is so much easier now that we have these apps, because when you used to just have a boarding pass, you had so much less access to all that information. What are the other tips that you try to keep in mind? Because when it's busy like this with Labor Day weekend, I mean, how early do we need to be getting there? Because I know that they say 2 hours in advance, but I know, are you doing 2 hours every time?
I typically won't. I also don't check a bag. So if you're not going to check a bag, that's going to minimize the time that you need to be at the airport. True. But I would say an hour and a half is probably a safe bet if you're not checking a bag, just because security lines could be extremely long. True. And there's a lot of people going on vacation. So that's just you're going to have a lot more families in line as well.
That is very true. Okay, so what annoying habit for travel do you think is the easiest for people to fix?
How much time do we have?
I know, seriously, there's so many.
I had to whittle it down to 6 in the book.
Yeah.
But I think the easiest one to me is what I call the eager exiter. And that's the person that as soon as the seatbelt sign goes off, their bag is in the aisle and they're in row 24. And there's people in 1920 that need to crawl to the back to get their bags because maybe their connecting flight was delayed. We used to wait 1 or 2 rows before we started the exit process.
Yep.
Totally understand. You want to get up, you want to stretch, you've been, cramped on a plane, but maybe keep the aisle clear until it's your time to go.
Exactly. That's something that bugs me, because I'm like, we're in the back of the plane.
Right.
Where do you think we're going? There is nowhere to go.
You're going to save yourself a nanosecond.
Exactly. And, in terms of flight etiquette, I'm sure you know it. So middle seat, do they get both armrests?
You get both armrests.
Okay.
Yes,
all right.
yes.
And then I think a lot of people forget that it's possible to not grab the headrest in front of you.
I call it the window wobbler.
Yeah.
It's not a rock climbing wall.
Yeah.
And the reason that there are the metal armrests in between you is so you can use them to set up to propel yourself upwards. Exactly.
Oh my gosh. Exactly. I actually didn't even realize that. That's so nice. So if people want to learn more, you have tons of tips in this book, right? So
I do.
Tell us about what inspired you to write this.
When you travel every week for work, the book sort of writes itself.
That's so fair.
There's a lot of inspiration in the airport. But one thing that it did was it made me laugh about just the entire air travel process. We used to view it as people watching. And so to me, when you go to the airport, you're traveling, that helps humanize everybody else. And you can laugh at the situations, and it's a bit more bearable when you take that approach.
That is very, very true. A lot of great things to keep in mind as people are getting on flights this weekend. We get the information right there on your screen. If you want to buy his book, it's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the places. Thank you so much, Brandon, for coming in. It was so great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.